8:33 on this crisp January 9th morning. This is the Blizzard Eve. I don't think it's that big of a deal to Miss Ladd here, who's from New York and a Buffalo Bills fan and has been in that stadium with no dome. So no big deal. All right, well, it's good to have everybody in. And I think today we have a pretty short agenda, and so we'll be in and out. But we do have some business that is not on the agenda to take care of this morning. So with that, I'm calling the meeting to order. And it's good to have another year here with the commission and looking forward to another productive caseload. So the first item of business outside of the agenda that's been published is I'd like to recognize Mr. Hunt. I think he's got an announcement to make for the new employee.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
In the interest of keeping the commission aware of our staff and kind of what we do, we've had some people come on board over the last few months. Thought today with a light agenda it would be a good time to introduce those people, so I will do that now. Miss Jessie Hunter is the new Davidson County Soil Conservation District Administrator. You may or may not know that a few years ago, that office, which was a department of one, was moved to within Metropolitan Stormwater. And their mission aligns pretty well with what we do, except they work with the ag community. So she is involved with the Soil Conservation District Board and certain grants and activities with that statewide program. Every county has a Soil Conservation District office per state law, and she is in that office. She is located within our office at County Hospital Road, and if there are any ag conservation activities that anyone is ever maybe has questions about or whatever, Jessie would be more than happy to talk to them. Next, we have Ray Harrison. If you would raise your hand, Ray Harrison and Barry Gibb. They are two new grading permit inspectors for us. We run anywhere from 875 to 900 active grading permits at any one time. We have state and EPA obligations to inspect those on a certain frequency, so it's very important that we replenish that group over time, and we're very glad to have them in here today to observe the group, have them on board with them. They've both done a good job of getting acclimated, and they're both flying solo, as we say at this point, as far as doing inspections. They're going to stick around and kind of watch the activities today, so glad that they're able to do that, and thanks for the time.
Wonderful. Welcome, Ms. Hunter and Mr. Harrison and Mr. Gibbs. Good to see Metro Water Services getting staffed up. So I know Mr. Palco has been pushing for that. So very good. All right. Next item of business is we have some other Metro Water Services staff here in the audience and also a representative from Jacobs that I think wanted to give an update on the Omohundro project and the mitigation work that was done in Shelby Bottoms Park. So if you don't mind, I'd like for you guys to come on up. If it's the both of you, maybe it's better here on the front table and give us an update. And don't forget to press the red button there on the base of the mic so it's recorded. It'll turn red. Yeah, sorry.
Got it. Okay.
Black button, turn red.
I was like, there's no red button here. So to provide a bit of an update on the Shelby Bottom Golf Course stream restoration, this is being performed by the Omohundro Water Treatment Plant team with the process improvements that we're doing there. Next slide. So we are doing process improvements at the Omohundro Water Treatment Plant, just as a reminder for most of you. We're increasing the capacity from 90 MGD to 150 MGD, and we're also implementing a new treatment processes to follow new EPA guidelines. So these are both very necessary processes. If you go to the next one. In order to do these new processes, we have to move about 1,000 feet of stream. We looked at multiple other options on what we could do to not have to move the stream, but in order to keep the historical buildings that we have on site and lower the amount of land disturbance that we do for this project, we ultimately decided it was in our best interest to move the stream. In order to perform this, we had to find a mitigation site to mitigate this stream encapsulation and relocation. So we found one across the river at the Shelby Bottom Golf Course. So this is the mitigation site that we were found, both sides of the road here, and this is on the far side of the river. Just to orient yourself a little bit, the top portion is the golf course section, and then the bottom portion is just a little bit more of like a park section. Next. So this is pre-construction. It's a concrete channel, as you can see, just allows the water to flow straight through the golf course with no delay, but this also increases the velocity of the water, which erodes the stream barrier and the stream buffer that it flows into. So not great, and it also has no space for habitat or vegetation of any kind. So we chose to restore this as our mitigation effort. So you'll see in the construction process, instead of just having a slick, muddy bottom stream, we put in a lot of rocks and sticks and logs and things to restore that stream bed back to a natural environment. We also used the trees that we actually had to remove just to allow for the meandering pathways. We reused those as habitats and vegetation for the stream bed that we added. We also restored the riparian buffer along the left and right side of the streams, planted a lot of vegetation local to Nashville, many trees that are about to grow big, and promoting new habitats for wildlife. So this is the golf course side, and you can see the meandering up there in the far part of the picture, that we allowed for that velocity to slow down and decrease the erosion that was caused. If you want to follow our progress or learn more about the Omohundro water treatment plant process improvements, we actually have a website that we update often. So it's advancingmwswater.org, and you can follow along there. And we have these updates posted about the stream mitigation as well. So.
Excellent. Great project. This, I hope, creates a template for future metro to metro agency opportunities for stream bank mitigation. I think this might have been, and staff can help me, this was probably one of the first collaborations with Metro Park. Is that right, Rebecca or Mr. Hunt? At least in a while.
At least in a while. We have an ongoing relationship with Parks to try to identify where we might do these projects. In fact, this particular section had been on our radar for decades as far as trying to match the right time and activity. And I think kind of the stars aligned with the project being done, some renovations to the golf course and whatnot. So the timing was right for this now.
Do we have an idea of the project value, dollars wise?
I think we spent about $2 million. Credits weren't available. From my understanding, credits would have cost us about $3 million.
Wow.
It was about 1,000 feet of encapsulation that we did, and so there was about, I think, 600 feet of mitigation. I think we ended up going over that, though, and doing more like 1,000 feet of mitigation as well.
And the negotiation with Parks can't be understated, or they had to redesign their golf course. They had to agree to, this is an area that can never be touched again. So there was a lot of negotiations with Parks, TDEC, and the Army Corps of Engineers. It took about a year of negotiations to get this done, but it was our only path forward. And as Kenzie laid out, if we didn't move the Blue Line stream on our project, it would have stopped the project from happening. So many negotiations took place.
I also didn't mention KCI is a partner of ours, and they are handling all post-construction monitoring. So they're making sure that the riparian buffer and all of the vegetation continues to grow, and also it doesn't disturb the golf course as well.
Knowing what you know now, are there any things that would have made the process more streamlined to facilitate this into another project in the future? What do we learn from this to make it easier next time, whether it's policy-wise or things that we can work on as a commission or as a department or with even Metro Legal and TDEC to make this go a little smoother? And that's a loaded question.
Well, I'll be honest with you.
Please.
It was DOA a couple of times, and the only way that you're going to have four major agencies to agree to these terms, because, the Corps would say something that Parks didn't like in terms of how they're going to maintain their golf course forever and how they can't get cart paths across this area. And there was a lot of, the devil's in the details. The only way to get it done is to get people in the room together. And we strategically would say, hey, come to us, we'll feed you. And we would have long, long meetings and full bellies sometimes make happy minds. And that there was three or four of those that took it to get it done. You're not going to get it done by sending emails and waiting back. You have to proactively attack it. And we had no choice because without moving this stream, our project was not going to happen. And the project, we spent $2 million. The project budget is well beyond that. So this was just something that had to be done regardless of the budget.
Okay.
That would be my advice. Get Core and TDEC in the room. They will come to you. But if you're sending emails and expecting magic to happen through emails and phone calls, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Good one. I didn't expect that answer. Buy them lunch.
Buy them lunch.
That's right. Great. Anything else from commissioners on that one or staff?
I'd also like to thank Tara Ladd. She had a big hand in this.
All right. Always helps to have Metro Legal on your side.
And it was a great lunch. It was a really good lunch. Really good lunch.
Put Doug out of work.
Anything else from the commission? All right. Great. Thank you. Excellent project. Hope to see more of it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, that will enter into our normally scheduled program. That's the first item of business. And Logan, if you don't mind, introduce the case, and I'll ask the applicant to come on up. There's only one today, so.
I think we have minutes and decision
Oh,
letters.
I'm sorry. I completely got sidetracked. You can go ahead and come on up, but sorry, first order of business is to review and edit or approve our decision letters and meeting minutes from December. It's customary for us to do that in a public forum, so I'll give the commissioners a minute or so to look those over. We did receive them in advance, so I'll entertain a motion for both. When ready?
Make a motion to approve the decision letter and meeting minutes from last meeting.
A second.
Great, motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. All right, now on to the second item of business, which is our first case of the day. The applicant is up. Logan, if I may ask you to go ahead and introduce the case.
Go ahead. Case number 1 on the agenda, case 2024-00033, Broadmoor Subdivision Preliminary, 272, 276, and 0 Broadmoor Drive, and 329 Ben Allen Road. Council District is Council District 5, Sean Parker. Disturbance of the Zone 1 stream buffer for construction of a road, sidewalk, and extension of an existing encapsulated stream. Continuous mowing and maintenance of portions of the stream buffer associated with the greenway. Allowance of 2 pedestrian crossings within 1,000 feet. Appellant is Keith Barker, represented by Kevin Bowman, M2 Group, LLC. Comments, Stormwater staff. Staff recommends that the final mitigation plan include a multi-year strategy for invasive control in areas planted with tree whips. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways to approve the final SP for Phase 1 Broadmoor and Ben Allen 2017-03400 prior to SWMC final approval of necessary stormwater variances. Greenways connections between the Broadmoor and Ben Allen SP parcel ID 06100008500 and the Ben Allen Ridge SP parcel ID 06110001700 to be approved by Greenways prior to its approval of a final SP for Broadmoor and Ben Allen 2017-03400. the final greenway route, including alignment around and/or through parcel ID 061050B90000C0 for connection to pedestrian way along Broadmoor Drive to be approved by Greenways prior to final SP approval. Final bridge details, including locations to be determined with the applicable final SP submittal for Broadmoor and Ben Allen 2017-034-00. Applicant to provide a tree survey, including trees to be removed for the area encompassing the buffers and open space to the west of the proposed greenway route with a final SP submittal for Broadmoor and Ben Allen 2017-034-00. Applicant to provide landscape plan, including buffer mitigation for the area encompassing the buffers and open space to the west of the proposed greenway route with a final SP submittal for Broadmoor and Ben Allen 2017-034-00.
Great. I'll give a quick rundown of how the process will take place. So the applicant will have 10 minutes to present their case. I'll start the timer after introductions, and then we will close the applicant's hearing, open it up for public comment. If there's anybody here to speak in favor or against, they can come up to the mic, and they'll have 2 minutes to speak, and then we'll close public hearing and then open it up to the commission for deliberation and may have some back and forth for you. So with that, I'll let you go ahead and make the introductions.
Hello, Doug Sloan, and I represent the development group.
Kevin Bone with M2 Group.
And I'm also Laura Schrader with Hawkins Partners, Landscape Architects.
And I'm with Thompson Burton. I'll make my part very quick so that I can turn it over to the people who actually know the numbers here. This is a project where we have been able to work with a lot of different departments. Parks has been involved as far as the greenway goes. We've also worked with them as we're trying to get a pad built so that they'll be able to offer mass transit to this location. We're connecting the greenway with another development nearby. This is a trail-oriented development, and so making those connections very important and really is what's led to this need for this stream crossing. This is also our effort and the development group's effort to to address the problem with missing middle housing in Nashville. Right now, we've got a big problem with housing affordability, and this will introduce over 200 units of workforce housing into the community as well. And so we hope that you'll support it, not just because I think that Kevin's going to do a great job of explaining the mitigation that's involved, but then the overall good that this will do for the community.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Laura Schroeder here with Hawkins Partners. Hawkins has been involved with this project and actually Ben Allen Ridge to the east. Ben Allen Ridge to the east is roughly 230 plus affordable housing units. And Councilman Parker has been working with Hawkins Partners through, I think, the preliminary SP for, this is formerly called Project 615, now called Broadmoor. Since I think the initial preliminary SP was approved in 2017, it was subsequently revised in early 2023, just based on market conditions, just some various changes for accessibility, things like that. So at this point, Ben Allen Ridge, the affordable housing project to the east that was coordinated, these access points that are shown that impact kind of where the bridge crossings we're proposing are fixed. They've constructed them to the property line. And like Doug was saying, the idea is that our development will provide more opportunities for the greenways to work through our development, provide access to those folks, as well as our overall development, which was roughly 300 plus total units. And then the center point of the project is this park you can see just to the north of the Zone 1 buffer. That's kind of the central point. You know, when you talk about workforce housing, affordable housing, smaller footprint kind of homes, the idea is to try to make sure we have opportunities for those folks to have access to green spaces. And so the number of crossings that we're showing is kind of really the focal point of what we're talking about here. Those are fixed, and the original SP had some additional spurs coming for the Greenway to Broadmoor, but this project will provide total connectivity from Broadmoor to Ben Allen. Again, as Doug was saying, in coordination with WeGo, this is currently not on a WeGo bus line, and the opportunity to provide additional mass transit to the area. This project provides enough, hopefully, density that, as WeGo says, future-proofing of additional bus routes to this area. And then also the opportunity for workforce and affordable housing to have a plentiful green spaces. The area that this is the Zone 1 buffer you're seeing up here, but Zone 2 buffer, a tree survey was completed by Panther, so we have that information. And the developer is very adamant on green spaces, tree preservation, and working with Councilman Parker and also with Greenways, we will be preserving as much of the existing vegetation as we possibly can. So the two bridge crossings, and one of the opportunities for the variance here is actually having the two crossings of a stream within 1,000 feet. The two stream crossings to the plan north are roughly 610 feet apart. So that's where we are in needing of the variance on that regard. And then just the project site that we are involved in, not the Ben Allen Ridge, our project is roughly 50 acres in total for the preliminary SP. And the drainage area roughly to the culvert that is where the entrance road will cross is roughly 65 acres. And yeah, that's one of the other issues of the constraints on this project is those two buildings, Plan South, West, 272 and 276 Broadmoor are existing. And part of the disturbance for the culvert improvements are to add a head wall to it. There's some scour at it. Obviously, there's some terrain on the property to make sure that we're getting rid of the scour that's at that existing culvert. We're not planning on extending it. It's more of improvements to the culvert to make sure that there's again, handling any scour at there. So as far as any buffer mitigation, we are blessed to have Laura and Hawkins Partners on board. So if there's any, I'll have her kind of talk through maybe some of the buffer mitigation at the crossings, and that's on the plan that's in your packet.
Thank you. Just to reiterate what they've both said, this connection here from the Ben Allen development that has recently opened back to Broadmoor is obviously all part of phase one and is very important with that connectivity to bring from not this future development, but also the other one back up to the street. So with those crossings, we have obviously some disturbance. And so what we're planning on doing is coming back in with meadow mixes and also tree saplings to help reestablish that. That's at a minimum. We'll likely add on to that just with more of the ornamental kind of aspect to it. Not ornamental as in the high maintain aspect, but more the native type plantings in addition to it.
And one last thing I would like to add is that I think the councilman for the district, Councilman Parker, submitted a letter to the commission in support of this.
So there are questions for them here. We are, there might be some questions still design. Keep it around. There, time's over. But
opportunity to create this sort of green space in conjunction with affordable housing, workforce housing. That's a rare combination. Oftentimes that's done in a more urban setting, but this is able to leverage both the opportunity for mass transit and for these open green spaces to be a part of the project. And so we're pretty excited about that unique opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Still, you think we're okay to go use? Okay. All right, with that, I'll close close applicant's presentation if there's nothing else. Okay. And I'll open it up for public comment. Is there anybody here to speak in favor or against? Please raise your hand. All right, there's one. If you would please come up to the mic and introduce yourself and provide your address, and then I'll start the 2-minute clock.
My name is Quentin Groves, owner of 0 Broadmoor Drive. I don't know if I was really in favor or against. It was just really for clarity to see what was going on and how it would affect the property. This is the first time I'm hearing about the project, so I just had questions and concerns and don't have a vote for against or in agreement, but everything does sound well. Yes. There's no house on the property right now, just land. But I just didn't know how it would affect, and that's why I showed up today to get some information.
Do you have any specific questions that we can help you answer as we deliberate? Or
maybe just from the map, I didn't know what's crossing their property there or what was on the lines, or if I could get a copy of some kind of information to see what was going on there. I'm trying to look at it from the screen, but it was kind of moving fast.
Okay.
No, not too many more questions after that.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rose. All right. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Oh, actually, Logan, did we receive any letters? That seems like the council person.
Yeah, we got a letter from the council person. Rebecca might be able to just pull that up on the screen and you can read through it, or I can read it out loud. Either way. I didn't get to print it out. It's the one called Broadmoor Support. There it is.
Okay. Any other letters or phone calls or?
No, nothing else on this case.
Okay. All right. With that, I'll close public hearing and open it up to the commission for deliberation. I'll kick it off and ask, was there anything not related to the greenway for the buffer disturbances or crossings that's part of this, meaning the roadway or parking lot? Can you help me identify those areas? And I see them on the screen. We didn't really talk much about it yet.
Yeah, there is, as far as this, what was up here, the Zone 2 buffer, there are some additional, the park preservation area, there is some Zone 2 buffer disturbance we're proposing. There's nothing shown in Zone 1 on the plan that you're seeing as far as we're trying to stay out of the Zone 1 buffer on this plan. But Zone 2, we were looking at, the preliminary SP had a buffer averaging requirement of 60 feet. So that's what we're showing is essentially the necessary impacts that include some of that southern roadway, I guess the middle roadway into the development. And then along that stretch right there. And part of that is park preservation program that they want to have in the park. So there's a balance between the two. The grades along, just to add, the grades along that road are very minimal. So like there's not a whole lot of grading changes. It was designed intentionally that way so that the roadway, there's not a whole lot of grade difference between the edge of the Zone 1 buffer and the roadway and the parking.
So the averaging was in the preliminary SP?
It said there needs to be an average of 60-foot Zone 2.
Gotcha.
And I know that we had some staff comment, and Greenways had several comments in our packet. Anything from staff that we need to consider before we go further into deliberation? And I'll also recognize Greenways.
Well, the reason I was asking about it being in the preliminary SP is that kind of tells me that staff, was trying to demonstrate support and looked at this during the preliminary SP process. And, this is kind of, I know the distance between crossings is something that I think could be improved a little bit in the regs. I mean, regs can't apply perfectly to every project, but it says 1,000 feet per crossing. Doesn't really say vehicular, doesn't really say pedestrian, it just says crossing. And so we're kind of stuck applying that. Makes it a little bit gray. And then, the greenways are allowed to be 5 feet with no variance, but that's not wide enough. So it kind of forces us in this direction. I've always been a little curious behind the limitation to the 1,000 feet crossings, if that it is more for disturbance of the stream bed or preventing light from getting down to the stream bed, or I don't know if Rebecca has any insight, but, is it more geared towards vehicular? 1,000 feet does seem somewhat arbitrary, but at the same time, it was picked for a reason, so.
We actually have it on our list to study for the next one. The idea is that the more you do not have a continuous buffer, the more routes of pollutions and pollutants can make it to the stream. And so we try to limit. It was originally designed for vehicular crossings, and on some crossings where people we wanted a driveway here and here and here, and they didn't need to have that. So we wanted to make sure in those opportunities they would come before you to see if there was necessarily a hardship that required that. But yeah, we are working on it, especially when it comes to pedestrian crossings. And on this one, as you alluded to, we felt that the amount of area that's being conserved and kept as open space and as forest definitely offsets the buffer disturbances that they're proposing.
I just reiterate that there were some developments historically that after their own designs would probably have had 15 or 20 stream crossings within just a short amount of space for the benefit. So
All right, sounds like we're all good now. Calling the meeting back to order, and we'll pick up right where we left off. Mr. Hunt, you were giving us some more detail on this. You may not remember where you were, but you were doing a great job.
I probably do not. I was just saying that, as with a lot of things, historically, we had run into some cases that could have created a lot of crossings in certain subdivisions of streams. So that's where this came from. I think traditionally, vehicular crossings were what was contemplated. So during every reg revision process, we look at that. And I think from some past discussions, we'll do that, particularly as it relates to some of the greenway crossings. So.
Okay. And then there's a lot of, we appreciate that the commentary also from Greenways now. Is there anything that we need to consider from, I know we have some Greenways folks in the audience, anything there to consider? Are we good? Okay. All right, and then also know that this is a preliminary, is that right? Yep, okay. All right.
I was going to ask about what alternative plans that you explored and how you ended up with this particular plan.
Specific to the Greenway or the overall?
Yep, specific to the Greenway, as our commission, a lot of times we like to see the applicants having explored alternative plans because we are attempting to have the least amount of disturbance in the buffer area. So that's one thing I wanted to ask. Were there other alternative plans, and what led you to bring this particular one to us as maybe the least disturbance that we could see in this area?
Okay, so this goes back to 2017, so there's been a lot of reiterations, but we always knew that there was the goal of having the Greenway. The connectivity was very important. It was looking at, obviously you want to focus your greenways along the waterway as best you can, just so that you have that interaction with nature. There was an older plan that showed that the Greenway split and came page south. But as we started getting into different comments, there was NDOT comments, there was the feasibility of the grading became very complex. And so it deleted that lower segment of it, or is more west, north to the left. And we've reiterated it to more towards the center. So we always knew that we wanted it within the more naturalized area, the more undisturbed area. And then just parsing that out just really was a manifestation of how the design evolved.
Yeah, and I can just layer in a little bit to that. The Ben Allen Ridge project was approved and under construction when essentially when this revision of the preliminary SP went through. There was a second entrance where the Greenway is coming through to Broadmoor right now that was proposed. NDOT went away with that for the proximity to the on-ramp for Allington. So the idea was to take the southern route to Broadmoor and utilize that throat or corridor as the primary Greenway entrance, because when the traffic was essentially moved all the traffic to that signalized and improved intersection, it wasn't really a safe location to bring the Greenway in and cross with all the traffic that's going to be coming into the development at just one point. That's why you see the crossings where they are as far as safe crossings. And at that point, the Ben Allen Ridge locations were fixed.
Yeah, I think if there was a way to zoom out and see how this connects to Ben Allen Road and the neighboring Greenway system, then you would see that that's what's driven where these connections are, where the crossings are. And it's been minimized, but it does allow the Greenway that's on page east here to connect up to Ben Allen Road.
I mean, but for me, when I'm listening to your question, I've got no problem with the pedestrian crossings and anything related to the Greenway. It all seems very efficient, well thought out. I don't know if she was more thinking, were there alternatives for a couple of the parallel parking spaces? A couple of things like that.
I will tell you that that is the thing I think that about this plan is we're going into the zone 2 for a roadway and parking. Knowing where the space is, I didn't know if there was alternatives not to have a roadway that close to our buffer area. Generally, we don't want to be building in our zone 2 area. We definitely don't want to build in zone 1, which I appreciate the way this plan is, avoiding any sort of disturbance to that Zone 1 area outside of the crossings. But I'd be interested in the thoughts of my other commissioners on that aspect.
Yeah, I would think on the extension of the culvert, I don't see a whole lot of option to minimize that much more than they did without completely displacing parking and hurting the building that's affordable housing. So that goes a long way from my perspective. Is on the north side of the road where the parallel parking's in the buffer, is that park or is that future future building site?
No, that there is, the box you see there is part of the SP. It was planned to be a mixed-use building, but it was really planned to be a restaurant that opened up into the park.
Okay, but that to the
That
right
is
of
the
that
park.
is park.
Yes.
One consideration, I'm not saying it would, something that would really tear me apart if it didn't happen, but some of those parallels on the opposite side, if you turn those perpendicular, could you minimize, could you just remove 5 of those parallels and put them up there without a great impact to that park area? Just be another 8 feet going in. I don't know, maybe that'd be helpful. I know swinging that road could hurt the yield of workforce housing. And so, it's hard to, I put a lot of weight on that and kind of even see it as a hardship, to leave the main drive there. But we also got to keep in mind that there's a lot of green space that serves as buffer, all over the place. And so I put a lot of value in buffer averaging. I think that y'all could claim a lot more than you have, if you wanted to.
And that might be something that we want to discuss too. There is going to be a phase 2 associated with this. From what I could tell, is it on the?
That's like behind
little
it.
behind.
Yeah, to the south, Point East. And so that's not in this direct area.
Because ultimately, we're taking a space where most of this was not developed, from what I could tell from the aerial map. We're going to have significant impervious surface for affordable housing, which is a need for our city. And I think it's just weighing that as well with the protection of that buffer.
And the impervious will go through a stormwater management system.
True.
So they're not asking for variations from that.
No. But part of that could go into the
The same thing. The program that they're tied into sets the average of takes the AMI and sets it at a set percentage of the AMI.
Okay.
And so through that same program, you have to be somewhere between, and I'm not entirely sure, but normally the programs require you to be somewhere between about 80 and 120. 30% of the average median income, and that's what goes towards your cost of housing. And so the rents for the multifamily will have to be in between that area, that between 80 and 160. Normally, true affordable housing is 60 and below. And so your workforce housing falls in between that.
Can I ask another question? So is there any way that this could be market rents? Or is there something in the SP that requires?
There is a portion of it that will be market rent.
Okay.
So it's a mixed income housing, really.
Okay, thank you.
Challenging. I work nearby, and it's fun to try to get a path around.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a trail through a sub-mountain. It's a big hill, right? And unfortunately, the flattest parts on the property are near the stream. And part of the requirements of the SP are the limiting walls and preservation of as much of the open space as we can. So it's working closely with planning, to your point, it's been closely worked with them, and they're in the loop on any of the changes that have occurred. So there's a lot of that it's tough to thread the needle of a greenway with this much topography.
I think we should be good to go. He said it usually takes about a minute.
So are there any variances relative to the purple that's shown there, pink, magenta? Down in that area on the south end, or they're all as focused on that enlarged plan on the front portion of the site?
Yeah, enlarged on the front portion.
Preliminaries are really just big feedback sessions, and I think that it will just make me feel more comfortable knowing that, we've done what we can to minimize the parking, but I'm comfortable with the primary road alignment, not necessarily saying that it needs to shift, because I know that could be detrimental to some of the units that are workforce housing.
It also pushes it further into the hill and causes more grading. One of the things that we were just talking about is using the fact that this is a fairly level area to put the road. I do want to make one correction. It's area median income, not average median income. That would be a little redundant. So.
Since this is a preliminary, should we talk about the mitigation a bit and see if there's any recommendations we may have? Obviously, I know that we are expanding the Zone 2 buffer, since they are taking up part of the Zone 2, expanding it kind of across the waterway. Didn't know if the commission would want to speak any more to the type of plantings or the amount of plantings we would like to see from a mitigation perspective.
I think they're a pretty significant opportunity for that. I mean, they're essentially, in between the streams and these buffers around the greenway. That's essentially a conservation area in some sense. So appreciate that approach. And it looks like if there was a match line of the sheet, it would continue on towards into phase 2 if we zoomed out a bit. But happy to
clarify the right line. That is the other development. That's the Ben Allen development that's currently finished.
I see.
Where you get to the little squiggly part of the corner on the top, that is the continuation of ours.
Okay.
slightly.
Yeah,
You see a
there's-
better image of it in the top key plan of how this fits into the bigger.
And if there's, we're talking about expansion of buffers, zone one's a no-mow zone, and zone two you can mow. So if there's, I don't know if there's ways to expand the zone one a little bit, or just, if you can, demonstrating that could be helpful.
We're working through what the overall aesthetics and vibe
Yeah.
is with the developer.
Sure.
But it is trending in that more native type look, less manicured, especially along this way.
Yeah.
I think that's something the commission will probably, we would appreciate to see. In light of, at least for me, in light of how close some of the roadways are, trying to keep things natural, slow down some water.
Yeah. So we'll circle back with a little more definitive. But that's where we're thinking right now.
All right, anything else there? Mr. Lewis, any other thoughts? No? Okay, good. Okay, do you feel like you have some feedback from us, or do you need anything kind of formalized?
We're always confused on whether to vote because it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'll let them speak too, but I'm good. I mean, I think I appreciate everyone's feedback on everything, and it's a complicated project. There's a lot going on. It's a much needed project, so we're excited about it. The developers are super excited about it. They are looking at other types of projects in Nashville that are going to help with affordable workforce housing. That's kind of their mission at Keith Barker Rethink, and they're if you've looked them up, that's their mission here. So it's a cool company to work for. They want to do the right thing. So appreciate you guys, everyone listening to us today.
Excellent. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Good luck with the system.
Thanks. All right. That was the only case that we had on the agenda today, right, Logan?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Any other business?
Yes, so I think it's probably maybe best if Tara does her part first on the business, and then we can talk about the regulation updates after that. It's the BL 2024-582. I think I have the language of the bill in for Rebecca to pull up somewhere.
Yeah, so I think, was it circulated as well, Logan, the ordinance to the commission members?
I don't remember.
Don't recall seeing it.
I know we talked about that, but I don't know if we actually said it.
Okay, so it just wanted to put it on your radar that there was a new bill that was passed. Obviously, the language is above you, and then we'll make sure to get that in an email to you so you can digest it on your own time. But it's essentially just sets forth that there's a little bit stricter of, if you're absent, what can happen. If you have any specific questions about it, I would, please let me know. Am I missing something specific, Logan, that you think we should talk about?
I don't think so. I think if you're absent for more than 2/3 of the meeting, that's where it becomes an issue.
Yeah, it really talks about absenteeism, and I think this commission does a really great job of appearing, so it's not really an issue, but there are some commissions where that is a problem, and so they're just trying to combat the quorum issues, and there's some also other information in there, but not as relevant to this commission. But again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me directly. Do not copy your fellow commissioners. But if I get your response, I can send out an email to all of you at the same time.
And we'll make sure this gets sent out, just this language.
2/3 is very generous.
Like baseball batting average.
1/3, you lose your job.
So Terry, is that just the highlight that would be the most applicable to us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The ordinance, it calls out specific commissions and how they should be made up of different members and where they're pulling those members for. But I think the biggest takeaway is really the trigger for absenteeism.
Are we on 2-year terms or 4-year terms?
I don't know that off the top of my
I
head.
believe it's a 4-year term. But,
yeah.
but if you step into somebody's role you finish it out, yeah. So we've got a few members who will be reappointed this year, possibly.
But our chairman and vice chairman have a 2-year term, so you all signed up to 2-year terms in your positions for what you're doing.
Yes, okay.
Just
I know.
as an
I
FYI.
know.
I think I might be up this year.
No, I don't think you are, yeah. I think it's,
Just don't
You
show
just
up
got
for
we
2/3
just
of
did
the time
reappointment.
and we'll have to
we reappointed you last year,
request that you leave.
you and Janie.
Oh, yeah.
Me and Janie are up in December.
October 31st, I believe. You're up, yeah. You finished out a term, so yeah. I think you're up in July.
Very short term.
Logan, that might be good, not because we have like another year, but coming up, kind of knowing who is rolling off when, so we can start getting ahead of it as well, just thinking through that. I don't even remember, to be honest, exactly when I started now. I'd have to go back and look at my calendar.
You'll probably be 2027, maybe?
So
There's a
yeah,
list somewhere that
2027.
has
Fiona is July 8th, 25.
Yeah.
And
The
then
clerk
Jay
keeps
and
a
Janie
list.
are the 31st of October.
Would Steve and Tom like to give us annual reviews?
What about pay raises? All right.
Oh, sorry, we have another one. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how we want to do this. I mean, we've talked kind of through my markups before. If there's anything specific that anybody has that I don't have on there, I guess let me know. But I've already rewritten some of that, the changing the word committee to commission in the Word document. But I haven't gone through and changed some of the other language yet, but.
Can you resend this to the group? Just, I know it was in an email from before the holiday.
Yeah, sure.
Are we addressing some of the things that we've kind of had some repetitive issues on, especially like related to greenways and those kind of things?
Yeah, I think those are in there.
Water dependent structures.
I think it'd be great if we could come back and weigh public benefit in with the hardship requirement.
I think the condition for variances, that's one of the things that I wanted, because your condition for variances, we have our factors, and Tara would be a good person to so we have our factors that we are balancing and weighing as part of our decision, and then we have our condition for variances that are shalls, which are a little bit different to me than a factor analysis. And that's where I struggle at times, especially on sites that have already been developed pre-regs, and now we're going back in and looking at them because they want to make adjustments. So that is something that I do think that we should explore as a commission in light of some of the cases that we have heard. Because I do struggle with that, where we have a lot where something was developed pre-buffers. Now they're coming in and they want to modify it, but to even do anything else besides just a pretty not very touchy renovation, they're gonna have to come to us. And that's where it's like, they may be moving something out of a zone 1, but we're still making impact. And I struggle on how to weigh that in light of our conditions for variances, and especially with the requirement for exceptional hardship and some of those other aspects. So I just want to share with the commission, those are challenging things, and I see those conditions for variances, those are musts, not just like nice to have, and those are hard to weigh sometimes in some of the cases that we see.
It's hard to weigh. The exceptional hardship cannot be financial. If we took that to heart, we wouldn't have stadiums and baseball fields or anything along the river.
Well, the difficulty is that these standards are law. And so I don't know how we, peel them back when we litigated a case where we decided what the standards were. And, to your point, the exceptional hardship piece, that's consistent across the board, even in the BZA. It's not about money. Exceptional hardship it has to be exceptional. It has to be very unique. So to your point, I don't know, Commissioner Simpson, how we fix it or how we give ourselves a little more wiggle room when the state law has been developed and is clear that those are our standards.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the BZA issue because I think that their solution is they have variances and they have special exceptions. And so the special exception can't necessarily be approved by staff, but it can come to the board to be approved. And, is multiple pedestrian crossings within 1,000 feet, is that something that, would still need to come to us? But, I mean, because that's hard to say there's a real hardship because it's a benefit for it to connect. It's not really an adverse impact. I think it's a misapplication or a misintent of how that reg was written.
Right, but special conditions under the BZA is something that's already permitted under the code. And most people are coming in to the Stormwater Management Commission and asking for something that's not permitted currently by the code. So special conditions is something that's already permitted with conditions, basically, whereas a variance is not, to simplify it, right? And so the BZA is a little bit different of a beast. I was only really comparing it in terms of what hardship is typically means across like multiple boards. I agree with you that there could be more staff level approval and that we need to clean up the crossings piece. Does it apply to pedestrians? Does it apply to cars? Does it apply to when you're trying to, make make 3 driveways for the same house? Some of those things that we could make it cleaner so that we could have staff level approval and we didn't have to come in and you guys have to juggle that gray area. What does it mean, right? So we continue to find areas where it's not clear, and those are areas that we could clean up. And I think that's why your review of this is really important, because, like, for instance, I flagged the Title 17 issue that we had to deal with, flagging the crossing issue. But if you remember something that happened on the commission and you thought, wow, that was a really gray area and we really struggled with that, could we maybe focus on that? Then, bring that to the commission's attention, or bring that to the staff's attention, and then we can make sure that it gets fixed in this edit. Now, to say we fix it, there's been plenty of times where we've tinkered with it and we tinkered to our detriment, right? Sometimes it takes more than once to get it right, and we endeavor, obviously, to make it clean and to make it perfect the first time, but it's really hard because you never know what kind of case someone's going to bring before you. But we would love your ideas, and we would really love for you to really take a hard look at this before we submit an edit so that we're not in that position where you guys are deciding sort of hard questions and not just looking at, what does this mean from your expertise, from your perspective.
I do have a suggestion, because I do think I understand what you were saying, especially with the case that went up to the Court of Appeals and exceptional hardship. But if you scroll up just a little bit, so I am looking at this section here, and so our subsection 4, condition for variance. So if you go down to 5, there is an exception there for reconstruction, rehabilitation, and restoration of structures listed on the National Register of Historic Places, where it basically says you are just looking, except for items 4A and 4D, there's an exception there. And I'm wondering if we could do something, or I'm throwing this out there, an idea, but something similar for properties that were developed pre-buffer requirements. Because those are the ones that I truly struggle with, where the development took place, we already have structures in a zone 1, and we know that modifying that, and if they're taking stuff out of zone one, it's gonna make the property potentially better than what it is now. However, we may still not, I still struggle with the exceptional hardship aspect of what I'm having to look at sometimes on 4B. So that's, and Terry, you may just say that idea doesn't work, and I may have to think about it a little bit further, but.
If floodplain levels are about to go up 3 feet countywide, which is somewhat what I heard in the previous meetings, we're about to have a lot of those cases.
Well, no, this would be before the buffers were even put in place, is
Well,
what I'm suggesting. That's
There's
a little
that,
bit,
or
yeah.
when the buffers move, I mean, because with that increased floodplain, there's gonna be new floodway and new floodway buffers.
Yeah.
And it's primarily on streams that were previously unmapped, and so we're about to have a lot of interesting cases if that model's right.
We are. I think that goes maybe beyond what I feel comfortable with. Maybe the commission does, but I do think those properties that were developed with structures pre-buffer requirements altogether, those are the ones that I have the hardest time grasping sometimes.
But making changes doesn't mean, so if they were in, previously did not have a buffer, and it's on, making changes to the rules doesn't necessarily mean that it still had to be reviewed at a staff level, and staff are experts in this area. So, they would only then essentially maybe appeal to us if they didn't like the staff's answer, if that change was made.
No, what I am suggesting is it would still come to us, but it would change our analysis under 4 a bit, where you can make our own sort of, like, that we have to say as a commission that it leaves the stormwater aspects of the property better than what it was presented to us. But the way I read 5, and Tara, tell me if I'm wrong on this, that we do not have to find an exceptional hardship. We don't have to find B and C for those aspects that fall under 5. And maybe
I'll be honest, I haven't read that in forever, but it
Yeah.
looks like it does say,
so we have to follow 4A and 4D, but for those on the National Register of Historic Places, I don't think that you have to find, let's see. Am I looking at the wrong place? Hold on.
4A and 4D. Will you scroll up a little bit, Rebecca, to 4A? Okay. Well, see, then you still have to show B.
I don't think you do, except for items 4A and 4D above.
Doesn't say and or anywhere.
And maybe I'm reading it wrong. So I can dig into this a little bit.
But yeah, I see what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying, but I also I'll step out of my shoes a little bit and just say that I think the regs are stringent for a reason. And the reason why they are is because we want to discourage, or we want to protect what's there to protect. And so you have to be very careful when you're amending this, because you're starting from a position, at least the people who drafted this way before we all sat here, and then the fallout from the flood, we're starting from a position that we don't want a disturbance, right? And so that's why you have stringent standards. And I mean, and I understand that's a very delicate balance, because you want property to be able to be developed, but you also have to protect. And so part of that is the way it is for a reason. Like, there's some vulnerabilities there's some gray area, but I think the reason why it's so stringent is because it was designed to be stringent.
So when these floodplains move, historically, if that owner owned that land, bought it, and did not have floodplain on their property, and then when it moves on to their property, to me, that's a hardship. I mean, they didn't buy it knowing in some ways, but it's like, that's where I get confused of what is considered a hardship. They bought a property, they want to add a bedroom, they didn't buy it in the floodplain. It's like, how are those considered, and could they be considered when you're looking at the regs?
My staff is taking notes.
Mr. Mishu's got a comment on that one, I think.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Steve Mishu, Metro Water Services. Okay, so I'm going to try to remember everything. For Commissioner Abbott, we don't really have floodplain buffers as it relates to floodplain whenever the maps change. I think where it could come into play is when you do an addition to a structure. The idea is whenever you do come in for an addition, obviously you're going to want your existing and your addition to match levels. So that will have to come before you guys if they want to match, and if it was compliant and it changes, then it comes before the commission, and that you guys will have to look at it and determine whether there was a hardship or not. Now, does the other alternative for the floodplain is cut and fill. We don't typically get a lot of projects that come to the commission for, hey, I can't balance. So it may be an issue, but it may not be an issue. We'll absolutely look at it as it comes. For Commissioner Simpson, you guys see projects that come in here that had buffers prior to regulations, and when they want to do something that actually triggers a buffer. So the commission actually sees a small handful of items that routinely Logan, Rebecca, Michael, and myself, we look at internally, and we determine that the addition, the modification that they're proposing doesn't actually trigger the buffers. So there are certain aspects that don't trigger buffer requirements. For instance, if you're doing an interior renovation and it's 30%, that doesn't trigger. If you're adding a structure and it's only 15% addition or something like that, that doesn't trigger a buffer. Those are routinely handled internally at staff level. And then to follow up on that and to go to the last thing you guys mentioned, or the commission's mentioned, is we are routinely trying to look ahead of the curve, look at what we have seen. We listen to what you guys say. We go back, we think about what we can do. I think it's very evident is if you look at the permissible buffer table. Today, if you go to table 6.3 in volume 1, you'll see a plethora of things that we handle at staff level. If you looked at that same table, just say a decade ago, you'd probably see half the amount. So we are constantly looking, we're constantly trying to evolve and think ahead of the curve and try to make things easy for the ones that we see there. Hey, this one comes in, it's constantly getting approved. If you're saying, which is on the agenda for us to look at, but if you're saying multiple crossings, it's been approved for greenways, we think about that. And then we go back and we start to brainstorm of what can we do? How do we change that table 6.3? So I appreciate everything you guys are saying. We're trying to, we have a tough task because we're trying to think of the things that we expect you guys to say. And we're trying to think ahead and trying to fix a lot of those things before you even mention it. But we have a running list. Rebecca keeps a good job of keeping a lot of the list of what we look at for reg changes, as well as buffer changes, and we keep that and we look at it. If there's anything that the commission would really like us to look at as well, absolutely send it our way. We'll don't send it to me, send it to Rebecca if she doesn't mind, and she will add it to the list, and we will start looking at it to see, is there a way? Has these things been approved multiple times over and over again? We'll look at maybe it's time again to alter table 6.3. We're happy to look at whatever you guys want to throw our way.
So lack of awareness, I'm thinking back to what Fiona was saying. I mean, a lot of people have a house, either they didn't know there was a buffer or one didn't exist, now it's mapped. Floodway is where the buffers came in, I think she was mentioned for floodplain stuff. But, we have a floodplain overlay on zoning. Any parcel that's got some floodplain, it just tags that. I don't know how easy or hard it'd be to have some other stormwater overlay for any property that has the buffer, like, crossing it. Just something to make people more aware. I don't know if people look at zoning in detail when they're buying houses like that, or when they're just, I don't know, it's just another trigger to.
Let us talk internally. We are working on something right now with Palco's group to look at how do we, I think we're even trying to come up with an app for homeowners. So I think we're trying to, once again, we're trying to think ahead of the curve. I think it's a little bit premature for me to talk about it right now because it's not anywhere close to being presentable. But I think maybe at a later time, maybe we could bring what this new little system's going to do for the citizens of Davidson County.
There's a new beta version of Parcel Viewer out. Maybe it's been out for a little while. I just noticed it yesterday. But now's the time to try to incorporate those things in that beta version, potentially.
We made comments on it last meeting.
Oh, that was it.
I think Steve did an excellent job of kind of summarizing where we have been over the years. There are parts of the Stormwater Management Manual that's not changed in 30 years. Then there are other parts that we have over time tried to look at and make subtle changes. One thing to be reminded of, if it's maybe not current, is we really operate under two sets of provisions. There is the code provision that is first and foremost, and then code authorizes us to have a manual, which is mainly what we're talking about today, tweaking. So we have the authority via the code to tweak our manual on certain technical specifications. Big picture, I will say, it's very interesting when you manage what we manage, and a lot of that is reg compliance, Metro being compliant to state and federal regulations. So from that perspective, there are certain things we can and cannot do. And the FEMA regulations are especially restrictive in certain regards, where we have really no ability to just say, well, we're not going to do this or we're not going to do that. So we've been very cautious over the years in making changes. First, we have to reconcile that. The other thing that we have learned is never to tweak a reg because of one case. That is generally not prudent. The reason for that is, and we have learned this, fortunately, with not many hardships, but when you change something, the permutations of that is somewhat like pulling a thread on a sweater. When you change something, you're thinking about maybe 2 or 3 specific cases, and you get 6 months down the line after implementing it, and you all of a sudden are looking at, oh no, we didn't think of that particular circumstance, which in land development and parcel development can be hundreds, if not thousands, of different scenarios. So when you look at the regs and you go, well, that really doesn't look right or that doesn't feel right, there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes as far as how do we do what we need to do without being less restrictive. We have a flood. The feedback we get sometimes is we think you shouldn't allow any development within the 500-year floodplain. I mean, that's the divergence of the ideas that you get here. So it's always a balancing act, trying to be protective and proactive in these things. Another thing with stormwater regulations, a great deal of Metro Nashville was developed before there were any stormwater, sometimes quantity, but definitely quality regulations. So development, in odd as it may sound, sometimes makes quality better because they may be taking a totally impervious parcel and providing treatment. So stormwater is very nuanced and very complicated, and we do endeavor and are very fortunate to have Rebecca, who has been doing this for years, and she's got a great sense of what the history is of our regs and of looking at the code and looking at the regs, working with development services to identify different circumstances and scenarios that have played out. So anyway, all of that to say, it's a little bit more complicated and nuanced than what you might otherwise think. But we do endeavor, like Steve said, to stay ahead of it and regulate while not having to deal with the things that don't make a difference in protecting our watersheds and our citizens and first responders and whatnot, but while maintaining our regulatory integrity.
I do want to make some clarity to my statement because in my line of work, I very much appreciate how a change in a code or regulation or law has rippling effects that you may not see. Like if you're focusing on one particular issue, it has rippling effects. I want to be clear that where I struggle, so under 4, you can see Part A, Part B. These are shalls, so we must find these things. And I'm not talking about any particular case in general, but for example, pre-regs with buffers, there were various structures built in Nashville. So when those type of cases come to us, I am looking at precision homes, which is the case that we have interpretation from the Court of Appeals as to what an exceptional hardship is. So when those come to us and they say, I want to move something out of a zone 1 buffer, or I want to move something, out of a zone 1, zone 2, but I'm still going to be encroaching on the buffers to put it here. when I look at some of the language, and we're not supposed to use financial hardship, we're supposed to be looking at maybe how it affects the neighboring properties. One could say that under Part B, I have to find an exceptional hardship, and even though the plan coming before me is going to leave this in a much better stormwater quality, one could say that as a commissioner, my hands may be tied and I have to vote no. That is where I struggle, because I'm leaving, as a commissioner, I want to have better stormwater quality for these properties. So what I am referencing is probably maybe a much more narrow change than the broader conversation about as buffers change over time. This is before buffers existed in Nashville. And so there's really, you can't even contemplate whether something may shift or not at that point. But I am struggling that I don't want to leave things, if there is a plan to make things much better from a quality standpoint, and I feel like my hands may be tied because it doesn't fit into what I'm following, that's where I struggle a bit. And there's not an option here. There is one under 5 if it's on the National Register of Historic Places, because I don't have to find an exceptional hardship for those. That is the very specific, kind of more narrow change that I am looking at, because if it's on the National Register of Historic Places, I may, as a commissioner, then issue this variance request, but I have to make sure I'm following A and D, but I don't have to find exceptional hardship under B.
I think that is definitely something I made a note. We can look at that. I understand what you're talking about on that.
What I would be proposing, and I'm happy to work on the language with staff and with legal, but it would be something similar to 5 where you may, it still comes before us. We still get to make a determination. And I do think it would be appropriate to say, as the commission, we are finding that we're leaving the quality of stormwater better than what it was, but it would only be in very, very specific situations pre-buffers being put in place, or pre those regs. But I could be very off base here, and no one else could agree with me, so I'm just throwing it out there.
We'll look at it. It's a struggle for us, especially a lot of times I hear you say, well, they're making it better. But are they making it as better as they could? And just where we draw that line is difficult, as Michael alluded to. There was so much developed in this city before we had any of these regulations, especially water quality. And our buffers applying to significant redevelopment is our real chance to grab those areas now while we have the opportunity, and while we're under the pressure from TDEC and even them from the EPA to improve our stream quality, and we have so little ways to do it now except under redevelopment in some areas. But I understand what you're struggling with. We struggle with an existing structure, or existing parking or existing anything in the buffer. Should that even be coming to you? What level, but that is something we'll continue to look at, and we'll see if we can tweak any of this language. I mean, we don't want to go to the full historic because, there's a reason that exception is in there.
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying this exact same language, but all I'm saying is this was a carve out where it worked. If there is a carve out that works where we as the commission may, but I think everything you're saying, that is our whole goal as a commission, is to protect the water quality, to make sure that people are doing the least amount for what is needed to, those are some of the things that I focus on, but I do struggle with some of those pre-existing structure cases.
And can I just ask one point of clarification, if I can move on for, just around the greenways, that is going to be something that, because again, there's a huge public benefit, and, as Eva mentioned today, they follow the waterways, the natural, and they now need to be larger to accommodate more people. And it's just, I felt as though even one of the cases, it's like historically that's where they have been placed, and they are being approved and required in some cases in preliminary SPs, but then coming before us, we're having to weigh the hardship. It just seems like this circular So is that going to be, I know you've alluded to addressing that.
And maybe we'll address it as part of the existing resolution we have on greenways, just because as we found out from Metro Legal, if we want to do something for Metro, we have to specifically call it out in resolution. So that may be the easiest way to do that, is to amend that resolution, but we're definitely going to look into that.
Okay. While we have it was a key piece. You know, I've heard that if you invest $1 billion, you may get an expedited environmental review. So I don't know how that will change things. I'm not going to go political now, but that's something that's out there. So I'm kidding. But all right. If there's anything else to discuss on this?
I guess, what is the plan? When does Metro staff hope to make an amendment to the manual and the overall regs? So if we did want to provide any sort of feedback or comments, when would you like them so that we can help accomplish your all's goals?
That's a really tricky question that Rebecca probably is like, oh gosh, I'm not gonna get into, because changes to the manual are change management, big multi-month process, but there are things that can be adjusted without that.
If there is a change to the manual that does not have, I think the term is significant impact to the development community, we can go through the mayor's office for that approval. Now, if there's something that does impact the development community, as Jay said, that does have to go through the change management process with notice. So small changes, if there's something impactful that we need to address, and it's not gonna, have a lot of consequences, we can just bring those quick ones through. Our next big change is going to coincide with the reissuance of our MPDES MS4 permit. We are in no hurry to have that permit reissued, but Michael, what would you say, maybe within the next year, TDEC's going to start looking at that for us?
We think so, and we don't even know if it would necessitate that, but we have gone ahead and we've started the process. Like we've just been talking about, when you look at a reg revision, there's a lot of things that have to be contemplated. Rebecca has started holding, I guess at this point, quarterly meetings with staff to identify and to start discussing the list. We create a list, it's updated almost weekly, of things we want to at least look at. Fortunately, that list has gotten smaller over time as we've started to address a lot of things. But I would say 6 months to a year would be the time frame that we would be looking at. We don't anticipate it's going to be a large reg revision if we have much of anything at all. But there are a couple of special things we're working on. But yeah, that'd be the time frame, 6 months to a year.
All right. Logan, anything else for today's meeting?
No, that's all.
Okay, 10 o'clock. Not bad. All right, with that, hey, Steve, anything else? No? Good, Rebecca? All right. Great, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. All in favor, aye. All right, folks, thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.